I'm going to choose to be brave here and do it. Because if there's no risk involved, then it's not being brave. Whatever it is we're facing in our life, if there's risk and we're moving forward, then we're choosing to be courageous, even in the smallest little things we do in the day.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, trying to help you find adventure every day in any stage of life. You're going to hear from explorers, adventurers, business owners, and anyone living their life a little more out of the box than usual. Hey folks, hope you're having a good week. First off, I just want to say thank you to all our new patrons. We've gotten a lot lately, so thank you to Karthik, Paul, Vince, Reed, Travis, and Lawrence. You know, it just means the world when, you know, you use your hard-earned money to give a little bit to us every month to continue making the show. It really validates what we're doing here, you know. We don't always hear from our listeners, so it's great to know that it's worth at least, we like to think we're at least half as entertaining as Netflix. So that's why we suggest $5 a month. I don't even know what Netflix is up to now. But anyway, if you'd like to support us, patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. That link is in the show notes. We recommend $5 a month, but you're welcome to do whatever you want. We just appreciate it. Or like us, share us. Really, you can review us on Apple Podcasts or any app you have. That really helps us out. So thank you for everyone doing that. Anyway, today's episode is with Angela Marie Maxwell, and she has been walking around the world for over 5 years. She recently did a TEDx talk about courage. I highly recommend you checking that out. That's also a link's in the show notes for that. She recently crossed 20,000 miles on foot. Yeah, I just hope you enjoy our conversation. She's just so positive, so charming, seems to be really enjoying this experience that is, she has absolutely made her own. So I hope you enjoy, hope you have a good weekend, and continue sharing the show. We're killing it this month, so let's keep it up. And now you said you're taking a month break. Where are you taking that break?
So I'm in Georgia, where my mom just moved to, and my mom is actually going to be joining me from Columbus to Kansas City. And so I came here to help her unpack her stuff and then she has a trike that she rides. And so I'm helping her pack up and, you know, sleeping bag and everything she's going to need for the road. And then my brother's going to drive us up to Columbus where I left off. And we're going to start walking on Sunday from there.
Oh, very interesting. So where did she move from to move to Georgia?
From Virginia Beach. That's where I grew up. And so my stepdad had passed earlier this year, and we knew it was coming. We had planned for it, and she sold the house. And she moved in with her sister down in Georgia.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So now you just landed on the East Coast, and I assume you're walking to, you said, to Kansas City, so walking to the West Coast?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So I'm walking back to where I started, which is in Bend.
Oh, Bend, Oregon. Very cool. So I guess that's where you were living, or?
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I was living there for about 1.5 years before I started walking.
Okay. So, wow, we're getting really close to the end. What does that feel like?
There's excitement because there's things that I am ready to create and that I want to participate in. Kind of these creative projects that really get me looking forward to, you know, in terms of being kind of, quote, at the end of it. But also, you know, I'm so kind of addicted to this lifestyle and walking that it's going to be hard to give up. So I don't know. I know that, you know, typically when we finish a hike or a long adventure, a lot of people go through depression. It's hard to kind of assimilate back into that. But I've had little breaks here and there that I think has helped prepare me. So when walking, sometimes it's a visa issue, or, you know, I've had both of my fathers were ill, and so I'd have to go and visit with them. And so there are times I'd be sitting in a bed and watching, you know, television, and it's surreal to me, but I think it also kind of keeps the reality check of being back into the, quote, the normalcy, the rhythm of life.
That's actually interesting because we do talk to a lot of people that it's 100% their adventure or their journey, and then 100% it's gone. Does that make sense? Like it's there,
Yeah.
that's all you do all the time, and then all of a sudden it's 100% over. And so you saying you get those breaks, it probably gives you a chance to kind of break out of the lifestyle of being on the road all the time, and probably feels in a way, even though it might not be at home, it feels a little more like a normal life. That's interesting.
Right. Well, yeah. When I think, because most of the time, a lot of the structure that people, in terms of necessity to create an adventure, is it has to be taking a certain amount of time off from work or family. And so they only have a lot of time, and they go in head first, and you're full on. Like if you're on, a hiking trail, you might get a night or two, with a ceiling and, or a hotel or a cabin, but ultimately you are completely thrust into it. And then you jump back into the way that you left off, like your toothpaste is still sitting on the bathroom counter, and, you've got a rhythm, you still have the same bills coming in. And so with what I'm doing, I had to let go of all of that. But I think it doesn't mean for me that it's going to be going back to the same thing. I have no idea what I'm actually walking back to, if that makes sense.
And you've had plenty of time to process what that might look like.
Sure. I mean, I think when people ask me who's the woman that's going to be going back to the place that you started, there's no way to have an answer for that. Because even between Columbus, Ohio and Bend, Oregon, I still don't know who I'm going to become or who I'm going to meet or what's going to happen. So it's really about constantly being in the curiosity of the unknown.
This is an interesting adventure because you're not doing something with other people, in the sense of, even if you do something solo, like on a popular hiking trail, chances are hundreds of other people are also on that trail doing it at the same time. Can you take us back to why walking and why doing it solo and the way you're doing it? Where did that idea come from? And yeah, just kind of about that. I know you probably answered that 1,000 times so far, but we're all new to the story.
Sure. Well, the interesting thing about that is, even though people do always start with that question, I have never come up with a better answer. And I think it's been the same since I started. It was a completely off the wall thing. In terms of, I had done small little day hikes. I grew up kind of close to the Appalachian Trail, so I could take a weekend to go there, but I never did it alone. I had never camped alone. And I was still a little bit iffy on how to build a successful campfire. So I had heard about someone who was walking, and something just ignited in me, and I had to find out more. Wait, how far are they walking? And, has someone actually walked around the world? What men have done it? What women have done it? I became obsessed. I was ordering all these books, everything, of course, from, Tracks by Robin Davidson, of course, Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and then also the people that you don't commonly hear of, like Rosie Swale Pope, who was in her, I think, late 50s when she set out to start running solo around the world. Fiona Campbell, who was the first woman to walk around the world, and she had a team, usually of one or two men that would help support her, because she would walk long distances, up to 30 miles a day. So there were all these kind of adventures, particularly women that had done these amazing long journeys. And I think by reading what they had done and their vulnerability and sharing their stories, I started to feel confident that not only did I want to do it, still couldn't figure out why, still couldn't tell you why, but it was like I was born to do it. And I knew it would be stripping down everything that I thought I was going to do in terms of getting married or have a family, or which I'm still open to. But at the time, it wasn't, I had to let go of building towards that. And I wanted to just completely kind of jump in full on to something that was a little bit bigger than I could probably chew on. And I did have experiences to learn. That was very true.
Wow. And now when you got the idea, did you know what kind of how big you wanted it to be from the beginning, or did it grow into that?
I knew I wanted it to be big. I mean, I kind of joke that I think I've lived my whole life that way. Like when I was 18, I signed up for massage school and I'd never had a massage. I had never been around it. The idea came. I'm like, great, I'm going to do that. And then, oh, I want to do yoga, but I'd never done a yoga class. Literally never tried it. I want to start teaching it. I kind of start to jump in full on. And so I remember having a conversation with a friend in Oregon, and he was being kind and very practical. And he said, well, rather than just give up your whole life and go walking around the world, why don't you just go do the Pacific Crest Trail? It's only a 45-minute drive outside of town. And I remember that the response, just deep, like almost kind of not like angry, but very much like, no, you don't understand. I'm not going on a walk. I want the world. I want to take on the world. And so it was, probably even bigger than it turned out to be when I started. Of course, as a lot of people think when they're preparing for a journey, whether it's in a car or by bike or on foot, you look at a map and you kind of have a sense of where you're going to go. And I had, drawn a line across this map, this flat printed out map of where I was going to walk. And of course, it ended up looking nothing like that in the end. And there's so many factors that come up along the way. One of them is who I meet along the road. Sometimes staying and I like to contribute and help. So for example, staying on a farm in Sardinia to learn how to make cheese and help redesign a B&B, things like that I think if I were to push on to try to get to a certain place by a certain time, there is a time and place for that. But also it's these experiences that make up, walking and it shaping who I'm going to become in these experiences. So there's a lot of compromise between getting from point A to point B, getting the visa or not, and who I meet. And so it's definitely not looking the same as when I first started.
You're building a framework for experiences you could never foresee, when you headed out. You just have no idea who you're going to come across or the situations or what kind of inspirations would take place once you put yourself out there. So I'm sure, you did see yourself in situations that were like, man, I would have never imagined I'd be here right now when I first got the idea to do this walk.
Right. Well, and I think the way that you say that, that's the essence of an adventure. I mean, even if you're doing something like a trail where there's a single path that you're taking, and sure, there might be many other people taking it as well, but when you have that path, is being open to where that path is actually going to take you. I kind of feel it as, even though there's this solid trail, let the trail take you on the adventure. So if you meet someone or you go off and, you find something beautiful and well, I want to get there by this certain time, but I would love to stay here and just read a book and build a campfire and enjoy this, beautiful scenery to my place. I find in the adventure world, it's a really challenging decision for people to make. No matter where they are in the world, it's like, well, if I've got to get, to the end point, but this thing has just popped up, there's always this dilemma. Do you stay or do you go?
Is that hard for you?
No, not anymore. I've completely kind of given up on this commitment to point A to point B within a certain time frame. And I'd say the first 3 years, so I'm in my 5th year now. The first 3 years, I was challenged with that. I was challenged with things like, I was just 10 days into walking Vietnam and I got dengue fever. And I felt like a failure. I mean, of course, it wasn't something I did, and I maybe could have prevented it in some way, but there I was with dengue fever and looking at the fact that I really deep down didn't want to walk across Southeast Asia. It was too crowded for me. It was too hot. It was, I wasn't enjoying myself. And I made a decision to go somewhere, to change my route, get on a plane and fly to Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, because that's where I wanted to be. I wanted to go to this last nomadic frontier. But I was still also facing that place where I think as a lot of adventurers feel they failed if they change their route. If you even go off by 1 mile or you don't get to your endpoint, there's a place where we kind of judge our success based on, how we got there and did we get to that finish line. And I've tried to just let that go, and base my success on the experience itself.
I feel like when a lot of people start making, giving themselves the freedom to, say, change what they had in mind at first, I don't know, a lot of times they end up wanting to quit at some point and decide to do that. And you obviously haven't done that. Why do you think you've been able to have the ability to change, but also not get wrapped up in the fact, like, this is really hard and I'm kind of done with it?
Well, I think it comes down to a mixture of devotion and stubbornness. So, there's a place where we feel like there's commitment, like you're committed to the trail, or you're committed to finishing, which, when I talk about, not measuring my success based on the finish line, I'm still deep down, kind of married to this concept. I have to get to the finish line. It's still there. It's kind of innate. You start a marathon, you really want to finish, every fiber in your being is like, I want to cross that finish line with everyone else. But I think that, I've allowed myself to just change the perspective of what the walk is going to look like in between. It's like the sandwich, and it might be chicken and it might be roast beef, but as long as you got the 2 pieces of bread, the start and the finish, whatever it looks like in between, I'm okay with whatever comes up there. So I hope that makes sense. That, it's kind of like you're going to have start and finish wherever they're going to be, but it's the in between, literally the meat, that makes a journey worth it.
No, that does make sense. I've had to make changes on adventures, and ended up being wonderful stories in the end, for sure. But it's I guess you can't be incredibly rigid with something this long and this kind of your own essence. Like if you were on the Pacific Crest Trail, you'd probably feel more of that need to stick to the trail and not go around things, and just because that's what the experience is for thousands of people. But this for you it's yours 100%. No one else is doing this the way you're doing it. And for a lot of people that could feel daunting, but for you it seems freeing.
It is. Well, it definitely took time. I mean, I feel like even halfway through the journey, and probably even now, I still have to consciously remind myself it's my journey. It is mine, and I can do it however I want to do it. And there's still this kind of undercurrent, this kind of fabrication that can have my mind still go back into a kind of judgment system of failing because I'm not doing it the way others would. It's, I think there's, the kind of parallel is a lot of people who will do like the Camino or the Pacific Crest Trail, they're all following the same route, the same trail. And if they don't get to the places that they set out to do, when you listen to them tell their stories, there's kind of a disclaimer, almost an apology. Well, I started out here and I was aiming here, but I only made it here because it started snowing. Then I got sick, and it's like we need excuses for not being able to finish. But the thing is that we don't really tend to prioritize the experiences along the way. And I don't know if the solution is to let go of the end point or not, but it's kind of an acceptance of do it however you want to do it. And it is freeing to let yourself fully experience it, and giving that space to enjoy the process. And what does the enjoyment look like? I mean, carrying a 65-pound hiking bag along a trail it's not to say that's enjoyable, but if you get halfway through your day and you find a beautiful spot, how can you just let yourself enjoy it without judging yourself for whether or not you're going to make, your end point in time?
It looks like you are going to make your end point. I mean, reflecting back closer towards the end than you were a few years ago, for sure. Has the journey been what you thought it would be, or how has it been different than what you originally thought it was when you first started out?
Well, when I first started out, I thought it would be a pretty continuous, uninterrupted line. Like the trail that I set out to do across the 4 continents, I knew I might hit some bumps along the way, but the way that the walk has actually turned out to be is legs. Like, for example, when I started Australia, I did Perth to Colombo, and then Mongolia, I did Ulaanbaatar to Wollongong. I ended up needing to create legs so that my head could wrap around it. Like, well, I just got to get to this point in a few months. And let's see if I can, or how I'm going to do that. I also don't set up the route. I kind of each day, at the end of the day, I'll look at my map and I'll kind of decide, well, do I want to go a little bit more north and around these mountains, or do I want to go through? And it has a lot to do with how I'm feeling. So the whole walk has actually turned out a lot more intuitive and less planning. And I didn't expect, how would I say it? There were places that I wanted to walk, and that I thought, without a doubt, I would get there. And I just didn't. In fact, the reason that I'm back in the US now is because my stepfather had passed. And I still thought I might have another 2 years of walking. But there was just this sensation of, well, I got as far as I could in Europe. And with the Schengen zone, I only get 3 months at a time. So there was a lot of ping-ponging, going into Europe to walk a little bit and then go walk like New Zealand, and then go back in and then go walk England. And I found it was becoming a little exhausting, and I wasn't enjoying it as much. And I thought, it's my 5th year. I think it's time to go home. So the whole idea here is to let the walk take me on the journey. And so that's why I'm sitting in the Chattahoochee of Georgia right now.
So we want to thank our sponsor, Athletic Brewing, for promoting a healthy lifestyle through making some of the world's best non-alcoholic craft beer. They make excellent tasting NA for healthy, active, modern adults. They use certified all-organic grains, and each can of non-alcoholic beer is only between 50 and 70 calories. They have IPA, golden ale, stouts, and tons of seasonal offerings. And recently, they actually just took home the gold medal at the U.S. Open Beer Championships for their double hop IPA. If you would like to get your hands on some, you can save 15% by using the code ADVENTURE at athleticbrewing.com. Athletic Brewing, the best tasting way to keep your promises. And I also want to thank our sponsor, CS Instant Coffee, for making this show happen. They make 100% Arabica instant coffee. They use compostable packaging, and each package makes about 20 ounces of coffee. So I'll take one of those with me on an overnight trip, and it makes 2 pretty good-sized cups of coffee. And it's an awesome feeling knowing I can just throw that in my backpack, find some hot water, and I'm good to go. Save 20% by using the code ADVENTURE at csinstant.coffee. You just never know. You just never know what it's going to bring.
Right.
And you have this, it sounds like you have this just incredible attitude about it. And I was watching some videos on Instagram. You just seem so, I don't know, laid back about the whole thing and just very reflective about it all. Has it been like that the whole time, or has that been who you become through the hike or through the walk?
I do think it's a big part of who I've become. I feel, in terms of some of the things that or if I were to say the person who left Bend to the person coming back, the little bit that I do know is I do feel a lot more confident in myself and in my skin. I feel very much like the person who left Bend was still insecure about her looks or about her body or about her ability to do the things she really wanted to do in her life. And I do feel a lot more laid back about it now. I feel that it's a sense of trust. Like I feel there's something moving. We could call it fate even. I just feel like I'm actually able to move in life in a way that feels right. Like there's no wrong decision. Everything is working out. And yeah, I think it's kind of a sense of confidence in the unfolding of the journey. And so right now it's still walking, but even when I stop, I don't feel it's the end. I feel like it's the beginning of something. Like by getting back to Bend, there's a lot of things that I want to do. And I feel like it's that the walk has created a shape and a form to the way that I'll continue living my life.
What do you think about building that confidence and that kind of getting rid of those insecurities? What about the walk did that? Was it seeing, literally thousands of different people living totally different lifestyles, or is it kind of just being confident in the fact that I did this? And like, no one can take away the fact that I walked for 5 years. I can kind of be rest in assuredness that I accomplished that. Because that's interesting. You left with insecurities and come back and you just feel so much more at peace about your trajectory. And I want to know, what did you see? What did cause that?
Well, I think it actually comes down to the willingness to fail several times. I mean, so for example, when I started walking, I left from my best friend's house in Bend, Oregon, and then I walked to Portland. And from Portland, I flew to Australia. Now, from Bend to Portland, I had my community. I mean, my friends were coming along the way, bringing me coffee and cookies. When I was near the end, getting closer to Portland, we all met at a hot springs, and I felt the support of the structure of my life still when I crossed. And then when I flew to Australia, it was like, there I am alone, about to walk into the outback with almost no experience. I mean, we're talking 2 weeks. And I was about to go into a place that people were like, you do realize people die all the time of dehydration. There's no water. It's extremely hot, and I was like, yeah, I know. And I think, and I say this lightly, I think there was a part of me that thought, look, I've researched and prepared as much as I can. I'm either going to do this or not. So I'm going to go into it. And yeah, there's a chance that something horrible could happen or I could die. I understand that. That's always the case with anything we do. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. And I think that willingness to go into it, knowing the risks I was taking, facing that, I did end up getting heat stroke. I ran out of water at some point, but I figured it out and I'm still alive. And I think that's the place when I can look back and I see the challenges I face and how I face them. That gives the confidence that if I can go through those things, surely I could do anything on the planet.
Oh man, that is so cool. I love that. And if anyone has not experienced a journey and adventure out there, man, I'm sure you would agree. We encourage you so much to go experience it. You really learn who you are and what you're made of. Were you surprised at all by your resilience or your resourcefulness at any point along this journey? Or did you say, no, this was always in me and I knew it, I just had to draw it out?
Great question. I think that I had some confidence in my resilience, but again, that probably has a little bit of a sprinkling of stubbornness as well on top of it. Like I said, I'm doing this, I'm going to do it. There's no backing out. But what I don't think I knew about myself was how to actually be brave, like how to choose courage. And that's why I thought it was time to do the talk when I gave the TEDx talk in Edinburgh about courage as a verb, because I don't think I ever experienced something in my life where I was facing fear and risk, like even just starting. I mean, when I went to Australia, I had friends of friends who were from Australia or visited, and they were just warning me. It was very much like they feared for my life. And to still go through with it. Again, there might be some stubbornness, but also it's kind of I'm going to choose to be brave here and do it. Because if there's no risk involved, then it's not being brave, right? If there's a little bit of risk that you could lose your job or your relationship, or you could, you feel like you're going to be rejected, whatever it is we're facing in our life, if there's risk and we're moving forward, then we're choosing to be courageous, even in the smallest little things we do in the day. So I think that did shock me a little bit. Like, wow, okay, I chose that. That will make it even easier for the next time.
Does your risk then have, and your courage, does it have boundaries in the sense of there's just things you realized out on the walk that you weren't willing to put yourself through, or places you weren't willing to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be knowing very clearly my boundaries. That would be knowing I don't I don't have the energy to do that, or I don't have the interest, or yeah, that risk is too big. And I think that that's important for us to be able to identify. I mean, that's where we say a boundary is, well, I'm willing to take the risk up until a certain point, or I don't want to take that risk because this is more important than that. So yeah, there were definitely, I think, certain boundaries along the way, but I can always kind of chew off a little bit more. Like my mom, being a little kid, it was always that, my eyes were bigger than my stomach. And I think I've lived my whole life that way a little bit.
Well, yeah, you walk in 5 years around the world. That's quite a bit to chew. It's quite a big of a bite to take. My goodness. When you left, you said you had lots of friends, lots of family, or lots of friends that joined you and were excited. What do you think? I mean, what did people say to you when you told them you wanted to do this, when you first had the idea, family or friends alike?
Well, what comes to mind is my mom. So my friends, surprisingly, were pretty supportive. I think, at least in, kind of on the surface level. Deep down, they were probably worried. For all I know, they could have been, having dinners talking about, like, oh my God, can you believe what she's going to do? Do you think she'll survive?
Right.
But, but my mom, she, pretty much was like on her knees begging me not to go. She was terrified for me. And but the thing is, not because she knew me. It was her own fears being projected onto me. I mean, I was 32, and it's like I've been an adult for a long time here. I can make decisions, but she was worried about her. I mean, she was worried for me, but she was also worried about her having to live her life if something had happened to me. Right. It was that fear of losing a child. And eventually, I would say, about after the first year and her realizing I'm okay, and her kind of gaining confidence as well in my ability to do this journey. It was almost the third year in, she bought a three-wheeled trike that she could lay down in, put her panniers on, and she flew to Scotland, and she joined me. And we went through England, through Belgium, parts of France and Amsterdam together. And she's also now joining me from Columbus, Ohio to Kansas City, or possibly Denver. So she went from I fear for your life to kind of my biggest fan. I want to be on the road with you.
Is that the same? Is that something she would do without you kind of forcing her, not forcing her hand, but kind of building that foundation for her? Was she the type of person to just, I want to ride my bike around Scotland?
Oh, no, not at all. No,
Okay,
so it obviously runs in the family. No, she was like, I want to come walk with you. I want to have an adventure. But my mom is, she's got a lot of health issues. And so she's like, there's just no way I could walk. I mean, even a mile or two would be strenuous for her. So that's when she thought up the idea of the trike. And so she went out and looked it up, invested, shipped it over, and just kind of went in head first. So apparently I think I got some of the stubbornness and the courage from her.
Wow. So what was the experience being with your mom for, I don't know how long it took, but being with her for part of the walk?
It was fun in many ways, and also extremely challenging. I think as much as we can love our parents, if you're together 24/7, if you come out of it the other end and there's no, murder that's happened, then I think you're pretty good. So, it was definitely challenging. It challenges my own patience, and we definitely mirror each other. And I think the most important thing that I keep in mind, especially with my mom joining me again now, is you don't know how long someone's going to be with you. And having lost both my birth father and my stepdad, I know that this adventure is a gift to her. So if I get over the hump of, oh, well, sometimes I get annoyed and it's really challenging. And, there were times when mom was with me and I think I can't wait for her to go back home because I want to be in my own world because I'm an introvert, and she's an extrovert. I just remind myself I have this incredibly strong mom who's willing to do this, and she's inspiring a lot of women. She's 72, and I just realize it's a gift for her. And I stop thinking about myself and I think more about what it does for her and her life. And so that helps. Yeah.
It is your journey, but obviously it's affecting tons of other people. And I know you're doing this for a cause as well. And I'd like to talk about that in a second. Can you tell us what, putting yourself out there, kind of building this framework of this journey and actually doing it, what has been one of the most, I don't know, just random or exciting kind of adventure within an adventure where you look back and say, I can't believe that happened simply because I'm walking around the world?
Okay. What can you clarify what you mean by like a certain
like an
or?
experience where you said, maybe the TED Talk even, where wow, I'm on a stage talking to people, or maybe it was a family you were having dinner with that you just thought, this is an incredible experience and I'm so glad I decided to do this.
Well, I think one of the things that stands out is when I was walking in southern Italy, there was this just this huge storm front that had come through. I mean, we're talking like constant rain and wind. My tent was flooding, and I started thinking, well, I'm going to spend maybe a week or so, see if I can find a farm or somewhere where I could help out, because I do like to contribute as much as I can. And I found this woman, and she had just bought a 13th century house in Tuscany, and she needed help with the garden and, also on the inside, taking down walls. And we are now best friends, and she just gave birth to her daughter, which I was able to kind of be a part of. I mean, it's just been phenomenal. So I think it's this experience at one point where I'm sitting in Tuscany underneath the wisteria bush having wine, made by a local neighbor. And you're just like, wow, how did I end up here? I mean, I had to, it's almost like I joke with friends I meet, I had to walk around the world to find you.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I like that line. Oh man. Yeah, that sounds pretty magical, honestly.
They are. I mean, and there's other times too, of course, that, in Mongolia, I remember it was 3 days of a snow blizzard. I couldn't get out of my tent. The tent was, the snow was, almost 2.5 feet high. I could have tried to dig my way out, but at the same time, once I was out, trying to load my cart and pull that through the snow wouldn't have been very pleasant. So, 3 days stuck in the tent, you're like, well, this is kind of cool, but not really all that enjoyable. You start to get cabin fever or tent fever,
Right.
But you realize too, if I was at home watching TV, eating a piece of pizza or something, there's no way I would be able to have this experience I'm having being stuck in the tent.
I was stuck in a tent in Mongolia during a blizzard. I can't say that.
Right.
And you can say that, and you're not lying. That's amazing. So do you have a favorite place you've been, or a list of places you've been, or has everywhere been just kind of equal?
Well, I still feel that Australia's been my favorite place. And I say that because I loved the solitude. I loved the desert, especially just the dryness of it. And because it did strip me down. Like, I found my confidence, having to face the challenges of being in extreme heat. My skin had boiled up on my arms at one point. I had to make my own shade structures. I mean, that whole experience of being in the outback and really just being alone and realizing, that self-resilience is phenomenal. And even in the outback, the magic of, at one point I'm walking in the desert and there's a trail and someone rocks up in a big bus that's been converted into a house, and they have a cappuccino machine. I mean, it's unreal, the kind of things that I feel like you have to just have some movement, whatever that is, some movement to find things. Yeah.
So Australia has been just that place for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, especially, on my kind of home run here, there are a lot of places I loved. Sardinia was, I mean, the experience, but also the landscape was phenomenal. I recently did Switzerland. That's where I ended my walk in Europe, and I fell in love with Switzerland as well. And there's a lot of gems to almost every country. But I think because Australia really stripped me down, helped me to let go of the construct of who I thought I would be, and build that confidence that I can do this. If I could get through the outback, surely I could continue walking other places in the world.
Ain't that the truth? And you did, and you are.
Yeah.
So has now I see I'm going to post a picture when we put the show up. But you push this cart, or you pull it. It looks like you change it up. Did it take a while to get kind of nailed down what you like to carry and kind of used to everything, or has it just constantly changed over the last 5 years?
So, yeah, I mean, like anyone in the beginning, I started with way too much. Like I don't know, I must have had, like 8 pairs of clothes and 3 shoes. Like I was thinking, this is what I'm going to have I have to be able to have my whole life in this cart. And then over time, I was able to pare it down to have a little bit less. But I knew I wanted a cart because it seemed that's what everyone was doing. And when I say everyone, I mean that handful of people that really are,
like
walking
the 6 people
or running.
doing this.
Yeah, well, right. I know it's not a lot, but at the same time, you'll be surprised. There are quite a few people, walking. I was able to connect with a guy who's walking currently across the states, and it seems that whether walking, running, or even cycling, there are a lot of people that are jumping in to kind of experience the world, in a way that is self-sufficient, but also willing to connect to the communities and the people that you meet along the way.
It does seem like a small network of people doing this. Have you found it challenging to kind of be the only person probably, around doing this? Maybe the only person anyone's met doing this?
Well, it's interesting. So I think the people that I meet, they definitely feel like, wow, I've never met anyone doing anything like this. But because I have that community of knowing someone who's running or someone who's walking. And like when I first started, or before I started, actually, I went and walked with Carl Bushby, who has been walking around the world for 20 years now. And I was like, I need some experience. I'm going to come, look at his gear. I wanted to see his cart and look at his gear. And then we did an expedition in Mongolia. So it's almost like when I thought, well, I'm doing this thing that it seems like only maybe 1 or 2 women have ever done, you realize there's actually about 25. Sometimes if they know of someone who did something like walking the States or doing a trail, they like to tell me about them. Like, have you heard of so-and-so? And it kind of, because they're getting summed into that kind of adventure world. I'm like, oh, and of course the most common I get is, what about Cheryl Strayed? And I'm like, she's a phenomenal writer and I absolutely love her. But her journey is so different. It was 3 months, kind of lost to found. And this is a very, very different journey.
Absolutely. The only person I know doing this is Tom Tursich, and we had him on the show. He's been walking, I think, 5 years as well. And
I feel it's funny because I feel like I know that name, but he's not someone I'm connected with, but I think I recently heard of the name.
We had him on the show, I think, a few months ago, and just a great guy. Has a dog with him, but just walking around the earth, and got really sick for like a year and had to stop. And but just kind of like you, just has this wonderful demeanor about it all, just this peacefulness about them that's, I don't know, kind of, you just can't understand it unless you've done something similar. So it's interesting that both of you have this similar attitude towards the world. Has the world been kind to you?
Yes, absolutely. It's funny, there's a saying that Carl Bushby once had, which was that he's like, you'll find that 99% of people in the world help thinking. It's like you might be homeless, who knows what you're doing, you might be asking for something. And so a lot of times they don't they don't want to participate. And so it takes someone very special to stop and actually ask, what are you doing?
I can imagine. I can imagine just about every time you stopped the cart, someone was saying, where you come from, where you're going, and why are you doing this?
Yes. It happens very rarely, but in the States, I've been walking with a big orange sign that has my website, which is, it's kind of challenging because I don't like feeling like I'm wearing a sign, but because I'm trying to raise money for this organization to build a shelter for girls, I feel like that's the part I can play. That's the way that I can help.
Yes. Yeah. And that's definitely something worth promoting and getting it to people's attention for. And if you don't mind, could you tell us, what that organization is and what you're doing and how you're raising the money, as well as when that idea came about? Was it with the beginning of the walk or somewhere in the walk?
Yeah, sure. So when I started the walk, I knew that I wanted to give back in some way. I wanted to see if there was a way that I could marry, the walk that is going to be able to contribute. So what I started was a 50-50 rule. And that means that if anyone donated anything to me, then I would give 50% of it away. And so what it looked like at the time was someone gives me $5, I'll give $2.50 to an organization that is helping girls and women. Now, for the longest time, I'd say the first 5 years or so, it was me just choosing an organization that I thought was doing some pretty good work. With this organization called Her Future Coalition, I had known about them because they were, and they still are, training young girls and women in jewelry making so they can be self-sufficient, giving them skills. And these are particularly girls who have been a victim of gender violence and sex trafficking. And just, it's something that's, near and dear to my heart, just in terms of someone who's experienced abuse and being attacked and things that I realize, I'm walking the world, I'm sleeping in a tent. That's not really shelter, right? It keeps the rain off of you ultimately. And these are girls who are homeless or enslaved. And I wanted to be able to help by building a shelter that will house up to 100 girls, that will give them education and counseling. And so basically when I'm walking, I have my website out and people can go to my website and click donate. And I'm trying to raise $20,000 to build the shelter. And we're doing pretty good. I think we're at 7,000 now.
Awesome. And so, yeah, what are your plans with that? Are you going to be involved with that after the walk, I assume?
Yes. So when I finish walking, hoping that we raise the full 20,000, I would actually like to go to India to help in building the shelter, but also potentially to meet some of these girls. Because if anything, what they've endured is far beyond anything I can imagine. And I think they would be such an inspiration to me.
That sounds like you have a goal and absolutely something worth working on when the walk is complete.
Yeah, it's something I definitely look forward to. I feel like I want to have a long-term relationship with Her Future Coalition. It's a very, very small organization. For most, I think all 10 years, I think that they've been going, they stick to the 90-10 rule. And that means that 90% of all donations and funds go directly to the girls and the program.
Gosh, yeah. How can you not get behind that? That's fantastic. Well, I really hope that we can get the word out to some people who can help out and who can donate. And I know that you also do public speaking. Do you schedule those on your way to Bend, Oregon?
Well, I don't actively seek the speaking events. It's kind of something that's just kind of formed itself. A lot of the talks that I've done along the way have been kind of at expos and events. And just recently, and probably out of necessity, I started asking for public speaking fees. And it's been really phenomenal because the first time I ever did it, because I always offered it for free. And the first time I did it and I got a yes, it kind of felt like like magic happening. Like this is a world that
Getting
actually
away with
exists to be
something.
like an adventurer. Yeah. Who can just, tell their story. So for example, in a month and a half, I fly to South Korea and speak at an expo that's particularly trying to help Busan, which is the kind of southeast corner of South Korea, to become a walking city. And so if people contact me, I'll, fly out and be able to give talks. And it's also what helps me to fund walking across the US. So I still live on $5 a day. And I have just enough to probably make it back to Bend. But if I can get a little bit more, it means I can eat lasagna instead of 2-minute noodles.
$5 a day. That is impressive.
Well, it's, basically it just means you have a lot of instant coffee. You have oatmeal in the morning and maybe, 2-minute ramen noodles at night. It's not a very nutritious way to eat, but it's affordable and it gives me enough energy to keep walking.
That takes discipline. It is hard when you get to a town and you just want to, blow however much money on a big old meal to sit there and do that and be committed to that. It takes a lot of discipline, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, and it also out of necessity when you realize you just can't do it. I mean, I remember times I'd be walking through Italy and people would be having a croissant and an espresso outside in the veranda. And it's like longingly looking at it like, there was a time I knew what that felt like. You're like, I wish I could go do that. But no, and sometimes I splurge, being back in the States, I might see a Starbucks and kind of teeter and then go, yep, I'm going to spend my whole $5 on a cold brew. And I have the freedom to choose that. So that's all good.
You've earned it. Now, I don't want you to take this the wrong way or I don't know what I'm trying to say, but when I looked at your Instagram, you're you're just very put together and clean. I don't mean, it just struck me because a lot of people I see on a journey are perpetually filthy, myself included, when I do something that's months long. I'm like, she just does not look like you're just walking all day, every day. You're so put together. Is that something you take pride in or something other people have told you? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be offensive. It struck me.
No, not at all. No, I totally get it. And I actually appreciate you saying that because, I don't feel that way, that I feel very put together, but I think that actually just comes from, priority. So when I'm walking and this was huge in the first 4 years of walking. So I consciously chose not to document myself. I took some photos. A lot of the things on the website you see, some of them were taken by me. A lot of them were taken by other people. And, I guess I could say I wanted to get a little lost. I didn't want to document my experience so that I felt, any pressure to have to blog or, to have to, be on social media. And I know it would be helpful. I could have a larger following, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be fully in my journey. And it's only through the walk in the US, and partnering with Her Future that I've had to step that up a bit, and I'm still learning it. So sometimes on a story, on Instagram, I actually had this one and I don't know if I saved it, but I was smelled horrendous and it was hot. And I talked about smelling as bad as a dead raccoon. It was just, I was having a really tough time. And I try to seize that kind of in the moment, but I'm not as good at social media. I feel like I'm still learning it. So a lot of times what you're seeing is if I'm on a break or someone has invited me into their home, I feel like I have a little bit more time and energy to put into it. So it's actually really good feedback that you say that. I probably need to, share a little bit more of the dirt on the road.
No, I mean, it's whatever you want to do. I definitely can tell also that you're not one of these adventure bloggers who is relying on their audience to get them through it as well. I can tell, I just pick it up that you're not used to this, and you're not, you're not using social media as a way to, basically make clickbait, which is what a lot of adventurers are doing out there nowadays. It's getting them out there, but it's also, exaggerated details to things. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. And I do appreciate, I mean, look, when I first started, Carl Bushby said to me, And he's written a book, and he's filming everything. He actually has a production crew behind him that has given him cameras, and he's documented it. So at the end of 20 years, they will have incredible footage of his journey. In fact, National Geographic actually did a 2-hour special. I think about, it must be a good 6 years ago. And he said to me, his advice was, you need to film. We are a visual world. You really do need to be filming it. And I went against that. and I'm happy that I did. I don't have a huge following, but it's because I didn't want to prove anything to anyone. I didn't want to actually, due to your feedback, I didn't want to seem too polished. I didn't want to try to shape my journey for anyone's eye other than just being in it. And it stressed me, I think. It stressed me to think about trying to blog and post for people. And so I'm still balancing that now across the states, how, being authentic in what I'm sharing, but not feeling the need to. And sometimes I get messages of, where are you? Are you okay? And it's like, yes, I'm just not posting for a month. I just don't want to.
Yeah. I would say I just say do however you feel, because once you get in that world, it can really suck you in, and it can pull you out of your journey that you're in and into social media or into that screen or whatever you have to do to make it visible. And then you can always do it when you're done. I'm sure you've got a lot you don't post. So, maybe you write about it later, and that's the way you want to express it, as a way to reflect on it all.
Well, that's definitely one I want to be able to tell the story in the way that I want to tell it. I want to write about it. And I think it's also just that I'm someone who feels a little pressure from having to post, and I just have no interest in being an Insta star. So
this are you getting antsy to get to Bend, or is it still kind of the same? Let's just see where the journey takes us.
I still feel the same in terms of just letting the journey be what it is. And, I don't think I'm going to be able to reach Bend until, probably late winter or early spring of next year. And that's allotting a little bit of time, in between. And if I stay somewhere, like, I like to use Workaway is really great. So I'll stop somewhere. And if for 1 to 3 weeks, I can work and contribute and have a place to stay, and I can write a little bit, or just even have some downtime and enjoy a bed and 4 walls. I like to do that. Awesome.
Well, yeah, let us know when you're coming through Denver.
Absolutely. Yeah. Are you based in Denver?
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, yeah, I will be seeing you. I think I have to make it hopefully by November, December to do a speaking event. So I'll be able to meet you in person. I'll let you know.
Absolutely. And now if you want anywhere else to speak, I'd love to. My wife is a teacher at an elementary school. Heck, I don't know if you want something like that. I know some places that would probably love to hear your story if you're interested, but if not.
Yeah, of course. I love doing that. I love to speak. And again, a lot of times like in schools and things like that, I don't charge. It's just kind of bigger organizations, but I like to just offer like schools and things like that, just to come in and talk and let people ask me questions. Kids are great. I love their questions.
Cool. Yeah, it's a very diverse school. I think they have almost 30 languages represented. So kids all over the world. And so maybe you have walked through some of the places that they don't get to talk about that much.
Right. Well said.
Oh, cool. Well, Awesome. Well, I don't want to keep you from your appointment. I know you got to go, but thank you for doing this. Congratulations. On just sticking with this. It's a lot to just stick with something this long, and also being so close to completing the journey. It's really incredible.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm just happy that you had me. You had some wonderful questions, and this was really enjoyable.
Good.
And hopefully I'll see you in Denver. I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Let's plan on it.
Okay, great.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Mason. I appreciate it.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Angela. Yeah, have a good one.
Okay, and I'll see you in Denver.
Yes, ma'am. All right.
Okay, bye.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for listening to this episode. It really means the world to us that you want to spend your time with us. If you'd like to help us further, please just leave us a review on iTunes, share us on social media, tell your friends about us. You can become a patron, a supporter of the show for $5 a month at patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. And if you know somebody that would make a good guest, reach out. We're always looking for good adventure and outdoor stories. And lastly, thank you to our sponsors, whose messages follow right now. Athletic Brewing makes the best non-alcoholic craft beer. Go to their website at athleticbrewing.com and use the code in our show notes to save 15% on your first order. After all this adventure talk, if you're needing some gear yourself, but you need some advice before buying, go to backpacktribe.com, where you can ask questions to the owners who have experience with all the gear, as well as all of it for sale right there on their website.